Welcome to Podcast This Escape, the podcast where we talk about the escape room we escaped from in the previous episode of this podcast. Vic, Neil, congratulations, you did it!
Yeah!
Oh my God. Thank God. Can you imagine stuck on that ship?
You saved the ocean.
You saved the very ocean itself.
Are we happy or what?
These puns are sensational, Neil. You got a future, I think. This is really
Well,
good.
that's a
You
quick
could be an
question.
entertainer.
What is a pirate's favorite letter?
It's R.
You'd think it
Well.
would be R, but it's the C they love.
There you
No.
go.
Thanks a lot.
We're out of Pun Town. I've done my 5 puns. The puns are all finished.
All right, fine.
And now we get to talk about what we are proud of you for.
That was fun. That was
You
a
did-
really
you-
good one.
Yeah, you did
I love
fantastically.
that.
First things
Thank
first.
you.
It was for both of you, one at a time. Was there a highlight moment where you felt best about yourself?
Yeah, did you have a shining star moment?
I felt best about myself anytime, as canonically I was keeping score. Internally, we were one person in the game. I was sort of like making sure that I knew who won out of the two of us. And there was one point early on where I was winning. Spoiler alert, it was a really tight race at the end there, and Neil did come out 1 point ahead of me. I was the one
I
that I said I wanted to
disagree.
keep. There was one that I said I
Deeply
wanted to keep
disagree with
score.
your...
Listen, I would be honest, I wanted to win, and I did think about cheating. You did, by my own sort of like internal point system, come out 1 point ahead of me, which is tough for me. But hey, it's what happened. And so I felt good early on. I think for me, I was like that salt moment where I was like, oh, let's pull some salt from there. I was like, that was like,
That was
okay, I'm
strong.
firing on all
Salt was
cylinders.
fantastic.
felt
I will
good
say,
about that for myself.
I play tested this room recently, and I was going through the puzzle, and it took me ages to get the salt thing. And then when we finally...
Your reactions, the way you solved a lot of these puzzles made me feel very validated after that playtest.
Yes, because I did terribly. But the salt thing especially, I finished it, I had no idea, and then I went, you know what? Vic's from Toronto. They'll know all about melting snow with salt. I've got no experience, but if anyone's going to get it, Vic will come in and nail it. So
Thank you.
that's.
I thought that was so
well.
fun because my brain often goes to puzzle methods, and that was more of like the tabletop role-playing method of like
Which-
actually use stuff in the actual world to solve it. That was brilliant.
Which I try to put a
It
balance
was
of that,
such
and
a
it can
good
be
mix of
difficult because
both.
often
Yeah.
there are multiple solutions that people can come up with, and trying to limit it down to one thing is quite challenging, which I don't do if I'm DMing for an RPG. You come up with a problem and then let them figure out one of many possible solutions. But in this, trying to limit it to that, it worked well. You got it. I was happy.
Oh my God, it was fun.
I loved using the you fart communications in reverse for the go door. That was like a fun moment.
That was also like you figured that out.
Well, I would say I think that's a perfect example
You
of
both
why of having two people work so well. Because, like I say to everybody before we start, like talk out loud, get your thoughts out there, even if you don't know where it ends.
Because,
and I think,
Neil, you started looking at the first letters and reading them backwards, and Vic, you started looking at the last letters, and it was the correct answer was literally just combining
just to do
those
both
two
ideas
things
at once. And so
it was
you needed
perfect.
2 heads for that one, and that was fantastic.
Great fun.
My highlights for both of you were actually right in the intro, because in the playtest, Bill had a bit of trouble coming up with the letters for poo in those ones.
Yeah.
Didn't know what to do with them. So, Neil, thank you for jumping straight to the correct thing for that. That made me very happy.
Smashed
And
it.
then
You nailed
as
that.
soon
I had no idea. I was looking at that and I was just like, I don't know how we're going to do that.
And then as soon as the communications one happened, Neil, you were gloriously reading out what it said. And we have video here. The people at home won't get to see this, but I caught a glimpse of Vic's face while you were reading. Vic had clearly seen you fart already, and just the knowing look in their eyes.
Just there waiting, just like, I'll let Neil read these out. I'm getting ready
glorious.
to come in with you fart.
I think that was super fun to start with 2 like simplistic, easy, like comedy puzzles. It's like a way to wet our whistles for
really set up
was to come.
the character of the captain.
Yeah.
I have to occasionally give the people at home a glimpse into things that I find funny.
That's the level of Danny's humor.
The No Rolls Barred episode of Scrabble but rude words only is one of my favorite things.
Yeah. You just say something slightly
Gotta watch
rude,
that.
Danny's gone. That's the only real reason we don't have swearing.
Vic, good call with the shark tooth necklace going into the indentation. I assumed that was going to be we had
Absolutely,
to
well done.
find something else. So that was great.
I totally missed that. I just misheard it. I heard it was rectangular indent at first. So that was completely my bad. I always like any type of RPG stuff. I just think it's fun to steal. 'Cause that's harder to do in real life.
I just love stealing.
So I thought it was just something that we could sort of adorn ourselves with.
I did really enjoy Vic, because it's the first time we've worked with you, seeing the moments where we were clearly on the same wavelength. Of course I had a section in here about rifling through the captain's pockets. Of course I wanted to turn him into a human puppet.
Yeah, you were always going to marionette that old man.
It was
done.
so fun. You guys really just absolutely nailed it. Neil, there's absolutely no way, again, my eyes glazed over as soon as we got to that pool section. And the fact that you right away were able to start methodically going through that, like if we were in an actual room, that would be the point where I would have just called for the clue. I would have just been like, I'm not even attempting to try this.
Oh, I love hearing that, and I take the compliment, because often, even in this very podcast, there are some of those type of puzzles that are far more complicated than that. Right? That was you could kind of easily break it down and find, this has only one solution, and therefore we can do the others. But some are proper. You have to really look up, well, if this sentence means that these two people can't sit in this chair, then that means that it has to be a purple dress
I
that
love
they're wearing.
them, but
and
they can get intense.
They can get intense. So the fact that I could quickly solve it was making me feel very smart.
Writing puzzles like that is awful. Anytime someone brings on one of those for us to solve, I go, I know you spent days working on this. I just know it. And even this one,
the creation of it, that's hard. To create them seems challenging.
This was the first puzzle that I came up with for this room. It was a rare case where I came up with the puzzle before the rest of the room. That is very rare for me. And it was just draw it in paint and write a grid and see if it worked, and then move the balls around a little bit until I got something that worked. Calling Bill over again. He had seen that puzzle before we play tested the whole room, and saying, hey, does this make sense? If you just look at this, do you get a puzzle out of it?
And I will say, I did do the same thing as you, Vic, was like, well, then obviously it can go past that hole and into the next one, because I know what a pool table looks like. And I'd be like, and
I had to go, it's a special
pool table where you can't go past the hole. That's not how this one works.
Incredible.
It was nice as well to hear you get through that, because Vic, you approached the pool table and immediately you were like, oh, I wish there was currently one ball in every one of these pockets, because then we'd have a colored ball in a series that matches the code that we need. And in the end, that's what you solved it down to. But it was very funny.
I was like, hey, what if you guys just solved the puzzle for us already?
Yeah,
Wouldn't
what if
that
it was
be
just
great?
already solved? Because that'd make it a lot easier. But no, it went very well. I think you guys smashed it. Like, it's one of these ones where I say as well, like, people are always smarter in the final edit than in the original recording.
There won't be much to get rid of.
Not going to be a huge amount of difference in this one. Like, it'll be very smooth and nice. Like,
I can't believe that this is Vic's first go at this.
That's
Have you listened to the podcast a fair amount?
I started listening when we had started DMing back and forth. I listened to a couple of the episodes, and now I'm just a subscriber. It's like I'm very much looking forward to going back and listening to some of the episodes. I asked them earlier, do you have ones where you're like, this is the one you should listen to? Obviously, all of your episodes I'll go back and listen to now.
They're fun. Like the Escape the is it Culligans?
Culledons, that was what we...
Culledon, Descent of the Culledons, that's great. That's like a long form one that's like a longer narrative where there's puzzles and ghosts and stuff. What, season 2?
4, actually. 2 was about a cult in a seaside town. It's Children of Mysaris.
Oh, the Children of Mysaris is good too.
That one was rough.
Those are fun. The one-offs
totally
are fun,
unplaytested.
but like if you're going to listen to them as a podcast when you're in the car or whatever, then it's fun to have them extend longer than an hour.
No, I love that. I did high school my last 2 years in special education, and it's just like it changed my life. It like really like helped me figure out like thinking in different ways. And so like in a weird way, like something that the school system was unable to do is like something that escape rooms really excel at, which is just like you're doing math problems, but you're thinking about it in a slightly different way, and you're like
Thank you.
turning it on its head a little
This
bit.
is
It
what
like
I do.
really rocks.
I tutor maths, and every so often, like once a week, I end up saying, maths is puzzles, guys.
It's just a bunch of puzzles.
I love that.
Look, thank you so much for coming on and playing through. It was impressive to listen to. It was very nice to see your brains work, and I think you worked really well together as well. So it was very satisfying. I think people at home will have enjoyed it a lot. For people who want to see more of what you're doing, Vic, do you want to give a rundown of where people can find your stuff out in the world?
I would love to. I am very bad on social media, so I would love to just say with this time, especially in the United States here, there's a lot of terrible anti-LGBTQ and trans bills that are passing all across the country in a bunch of different states. So find local organizations in your community. In Florida, there's one called Zebra Youth that I really, really love. But if not, there's a hotline called Trans Lifeline here in the United States. They're a warm line. They do a lot of really great work. Go find and follow trans and LGBTQ people in your community. Fill your feed with them. Go find local organizations that are doing good work in your own community.
Well said.
Wonderful. Well, yeah. Look, thank you so much for coming on and playing a fun game with us.
Are you kidding? Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We've had to let Vic run off to another appointment partway through, but welcome back to the chill
show.
zone.
Yeah,
Well,
the
where we talk about
post show.
where we make fun of Vic Michaelis. Oh, what a terrible
No, I feel
performance.
terrible that she had to depart early because we're recording this late at night for me in New York on the East Coast of America, and it was supposed to be at 10 o'clock start because I'm doing a play currently, and I'm also directing my husband's cabaret at a place called 54 Below. And you guys will like that. So David Bertka is my husband's name, and he's doing a cabaret called Bertka, David, Warily He Rolls Along. And it's a construct that I designed. He did it 12 years ago. He's 8.5 years sober now, and he's doing it again. And the conceit is that it plays out in reverse order. So it's 9 scenes. And it begins by saying, like, the lights go to half, and then the voice of God says, "Really? We just finished the show. He's okay to do an encore. He seems, if he wants to. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage David Bertka." And the audience, applauds because they think the show's starting. And he comes out and he's sloppy and he's sweaty and he's like overly impressed with himself, and he takes deep bows and he says, "Thank you all so much. What a night we've had." And he sings the big number, and then blackout. And then you see like 2 screens on the side say scene 9 to scene 8, and there's like a reverse sound, and then the lights come up, and now we're a scene earlier, and he says, "Wow, well, that was a lot. So we have time for one more song. Do you guys want to hear it?" And then throughout it, you realize that he's taken his first drink in 8 years, and by the end of you get to scene 1, he's completely sober and grateful and like the good version of himself. But you kind of it's a puzzle in its structure, and it's been fun and strange because you go to a place that's used to doing regular cabarets where they just have someone come in and say, "I'm going to sing these songs," and then they sing the songs and tell stories. And then, I'm doing tech
and then this happens.
And screens and giving them scripts and cue to cues and all this stuff. So that's been how my time has been spent. And I only do the sidebar because it seems kind of puzzle adjacent, the structure
I get that.
of the cabaret. But then I was supposed to be here at 10 p.m. to record, and I was debriefing on that show and got here 20 minutes late, and then I couldn't even get all of the tech stuff, the microphone up and everything.
Yeah, Zencaster wasn't cooperative.
Zencaster wasn't cooperating where I would normally be recording this in my office. I'm 3D printing a bunch of stuff because Prusa has lent me the big XL 3D printer. So I'm doing a holiday gift thing. So if we were to record it there, you'd just be hearing 3D printing. So we didn't even start until 45 minutes late. And that's why Vic was having to leave this post show a bit early. So I take responsibility.
We got through the whole room, so I am happy.
Huzzah.
Yes. We go through the big important part, and now we can have a relaxed discussion.
Let me ask
I'm
you
actually
a
really
question.
interested. Oh, sorry.
I want to ask you a question. Why would you do a 4-episode spaghetti and meatballs arc and not have them all tie up and have it be like a long form arc with callbacks and such?
Yes, Danny. Why?
There are very micro callbacks.
There are a few micro callbacks.
Just micro ones.
Connections. So, for example, there was a person in this room that was mentioned as being reliable but not being around. I'm assuming that was the one.
Someone who was a friend, the one person that you liked from the night shift, but you haven't seen them for the last
would have
24
been
hours.
The main character of episode 2.
David from episode 2.
Right.
Also disillusioned with their job and absconded to go treasure hunting with a child.
Which was the
David,
origin
Yep.
of the ship that was the thing you had to hit was the remains of the beluga coming up out of the water.
Oh,
as
that's
predicted.
cool.
You also may have noticed that at the start you were let out of the closet by 3 children roaming the hallway after curfew.
Is a reference to the episode that just released,
Nice.
of in which the characters were 3 kids in a trench coat who escaped right at the end.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, there's been minor, and in that room there was a callback to the first room where they dropped a chair off the side of the boat, which landed on someone's head, giving them a concussion. Who was the person with amnesia in the first of these 4 rooms? So there's all these weird little ties.
Great.
But is there a reason, Danny, that you avoided specifically, like thinking let's do one long big story?
In general, it's just because nothing was really sparking in that regard.
Sure.
I did initially. The only reason I chose a cruise ship was because something in my head had decided I want to try to lean into this thing that most immersive theatre experiences do, which is these things are loosely linked, but they are typically linked by just where they are, and things are going on in all the places. And if you're in an immersive experience, you can just wander from one room to another, be part of one story. Maybe there'll be a link to another story. Maybe one person's adventure will impact how someone else's adventure goes, but they also may not. I wanted to play with that looser feel and see if I could gain further appreciation of the immersive theater experience.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect
those
sense.
sorts of things, I can struggle with some immersive theater things a little bit, like when it's that sort of mix of active and passive of how you enjoy the experience. Sometimes it doesn't click with me as much as it clicks with other people, and I want it to. So I wanted to try to dive into it a little bit.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. I suppose there's also one of the things that we also sometimes worry about is like the connected arcs are really fun from a listener perspective to see this story evolve over 10 rooms. And we sometimes worry with guests that it's not as satisfying from a guest perspective to be like your room 6 out of 10.
Yeah,
Let me tell you
were so
what
excited
happened.
to hear that you were 4 out of 4.
Because like 4 out of 4 is like you see the result. But when you're 6 out of 10, it's like, well, let me know how this resolves eventually. And so there's like a lack of satisfaction from a player perspective because you don't get to see the result of your meta narrative. You see the end of your room, but not necessarily how the whole story connects. And so it was also a nice way to get people on the show and to not have to be like, hey, you're going to have a fun experience and we'll let you know about how it might end or how it did start before and after you. And I always worry sometimes that when guests are in that situation that they feel a bit like, oh, that was fun. I wish I knew the rest, or, it would have been nice to experience the whole thing.
But I would assert that because you guys are popular enough that people who are coming on have either done it before, or if there's new people, then they're nervous because they haven't done it before and they would go back and listen to episodes, right? So you could theoretically send, you could have sent the 2 of us, I mean, say you were doing a long arc, or like even like a sloppy version of it so that you could then listen and go, okay, I know what I heard,
Yeah.
and I'm going to continue on the narrative, even if it's thing. That's the tricky part. Is if you have no
Yeah.
connection to the previous episode, it makes it a little harder.
Yeah, exactly. And also sometimes, you might send someone, the episodes beforehand, but no one wants to be given like
Homework.
7 hours of homework
Fair.
before coming onto a podcast, especially if it's their first time. Like, hey, we don't know you very well. Would you like to come on our show and play a fun game? Could you do have to listen to these 9 hours of previous episodes before, so you're up to date. At that point, they're just like, so I've had a different commitment has come up. Sorry, doesn't look like I can do. So, I think part of, the experience of getting guests on the show for the last 7 years or whatever, part of that has been knowing that I think what makes it an interesting thing for people to come onto is that it's a game and that there's no work. They don't have to think about the stories they're going to tell, or they don't have to plan to repeat answers to questions they've been asked before, or do anything or write anything. It's just come play a fun game.
Yeah.
It's relaxing and easy. So, look at, obviously we've had guests on for Connected Arcs. We've had guests who were new for Connected Arcs before. So it obviously isn't too terrible a thing.
Not
it's
at
also
all.
just nice to take that worry away.
And this is the first one that I've done where I was playing with someone I didn't know and hadn't played any kind of escapey thing with before. So
is that right?
that was super fun.
Well done.
But I didn't know that they were as competitive as they were. So as it was going on,
and I still don't know how competitive they are, or whether it's just whether they just realized this is a good bit to climb in on. I think this is a fun
Next
bit.
time, we'll have the two of you back on again, and we'll slip you all of the answers beforehand, just to see how much it distresses them.
It's a good bit during an episode when you can punctuate the moments of solving with, and that one goes to you. Let me mark that in my little book. I'll tally it up. That's 2 points for you. I'll get you.
I like the addition of saying, "Oh, well, that was an innovative thought. 2 points."
A point for me.
Well said.
But it's also, I like the breakdown in an in a podcast this escape episode. Because often I think some people will get to the end with a feeling of like, oh, I didn't contribute or I didn't solve anything. When, as we'd love to talk about, getting the first half of a solution is as valuable as getting the last half of the solution. And sometimes you have people on Escape This Podcast who are very good at like setting everything up and going, here's where we're at. I think it's this type of a puzzle. I think it's something to do with this and this, but I can't quite figure it out. And someone else will take that and do all the finishing touches. And I think it's sometimes nice to like really highlight that, no, like that was the key part of this room. Like, sometimes even if you don't get any solutions or any final bits, you're still controlling and understanding and organizing the puzzles in a way that is absolutely necessary for success. And it's good to break down how these things work in escape rooms. Because even like in a physical escape room, someone will be like, oh, I didn't solve anything. I just found every hidden part and put them all on the table and put them in the right places, and I uncovered all and I opened all this. It's like, yeah, well, that's just called doing an escape room. Like, it doesn't matter if you put the key in the lock. You found the key and the lock. Like, you're fine.
You had to say that for, I think it was the last episode, wasn't it? We went through the podcast This Escape. We were talking to people about what they did well. And then as soon as we had hung up the call, I went, oh no, we forgot to mention just how in sync with the medium one of them was, and how just structurally they understood how to write things down, how to engage with things. We've already interacted with that so we can put that aside.
Ella from the last episode had a really good game.
And we didn't mention that on the show. And I think
that's
that was a great disservice.
I'll mention it right now. Ella had a fantastic game of complete, like, knowing where they were, where to go, what to do, and like the lists of, we've done this, I've organized all that, this is done. No, don't look at that yet, because that's clearly half a puzzle. Let's wait till we find the other half of the puzzle. Like a very solid understanding of how to get through an escape room like that. And it's such a key thing that you need.
And also, it's a good skill in the world that we live in to break down good sportsmanship and honoring what people did that was good.
I want to talk a little bit, just going back to what you mentioned in terms of the cabaret show that
David
your husband is putting on, is this feeling of like writing from a concept of like time not being normally presented, right? Going backwards in time in this case. Because we've had a similar experience recently. We've been working on we just released Rise of the Golden Idol, which we were working on as part of the writing team, which also had a very broken up time structure. There's a lot of like, you're here and now you're much earlier, and then we're going to show you an even earlier event but out of order, and then we're going to move forward and take these things.
Cool.
And designing with this concept of like, you know, like in a cabaret show, when you get to the end and they're on stage and they're looking, you know, disheveled and they're coming back for the encore, you've built up such a rapport with the audience that the encore has this feeling to it of like, oh, it's big, you know, finally one more time. And then starting with that, obviously the audience will be a bit like, where are we, you know, where are we at? Like how much, like, what was that? What's a process like that like for you of like what, because you have to approach things that feel one way, but realize that the audience might be in a different feeling than usually is associated with that moment.
That was exactly the interesting piece for me. I don't love the A to Z structure of a cabaret because I think it requires a disbelief from everyone. It's almost infomercial acting in a way. It's like,
Okay.
I come up and the audience is there to like have drinks and watch you while you stand at a piano and say, I'm from last time I visited Hawaii, I really loved all the tiki torches, and so I'm about to sing this next song because it makes me think of Hawaii. And then it's like a weird preamble to then just sing a song, and I don't know, like to try and stitch a story together with like overly inauthentic, indifferent stories as your night of art always feels disingenuous to me. I shouldn't say always, often feels disingenuous to me. And I like it. It's some people don't want to spend their night going and watching intense theater where they're having to really pay attention to names and scenes and out of sequence stuff. They want to just go and with their friends and listen to people sing good songs. And I have done that, and I do that as well. But it also is, sometimes I find it a little cringy. And so we thought, let's reverse that. And the puzzler in me thought that would be a fun idea. And in fact, what you referenced, I think is intriguing and was also complicated. The very first of the 4 that we did for David, I wanted it to be that he would do the encore, come on a little over the top and a little too loose and too self-appreciative, and I wanted the audience to quizzically pass judgment on him as a person, and then have to realize that, oh no, they were wrong in passing the judgment, that it was earned. It was just not earned in the times construct that we've created.
Right.
But what I did inaccurately is that I then, when scene 8, which would be the finale, not the encore, which was the second number that he performed, when those lights came up, it was different lights, and then he looked very serious at the end of a very fun number, then new scene, and he goes, wow, well that was a lot. I'm kind of stunned and spinning, because he'd just sung a really serious song, but you didn't know that because you haven't heard it yet. But I thought it was clever to have him say a line when the new scene comes up that could relate to the previous scene, but it actually relates to the one you haven't seen yet. And I thought that the puzzler in me thought, oh, that's cool, because as people solve it, they'll go, oh, that's a smart move. However, it was just very complicated and convoluted, and it needed to be. This is like playtesting, but poor David had to do it in front of an audience. Of most people did not realize it was happening backwards. They just thought that he was inebriated and didn't know where he was in the show, and so they just thought he was saying things inaccurately. So for the second show, we added screens on the side that say scene 9, then scene 8, then scene 7, then scene 6 between the scenes. And then I added a reverse audio that would play before the lights came up. And I think that the overtness of that made people realize what was happening and then not have to be confused. Then they could pay attention to him and the storytelling and the singing and be thinking that it was a clever idea.
And it's kind of like, it's one of those ones where you probably could have gotten the first version to work in a context where people were like, I'm going to see a
theater piece,
puzzly style theater thing. Like I'll pick up, but when it's like, I'm seeing a cabaret show.
Yes.
You need something to really kind of hit home. Like, hey, gong, this is different than what you were expecting. So I need to set an expectation really quickly so that I can get you into the right brain.
That's a very wonderfully astute observation, which I probably should have thought about earlier. But as because I wanted to be doing a cabaret for theater puzzly people, but the people that come to see cabarets are cabaret viewing people.
Yeah, so it's a different audience.
It's a different audience,
approach.
it's a different vocabulary, it's a different way of storytelling. When you're telling a story in a cabaret setting with like little tables and some nibbles and some drinks, people want to hear you talk about the story as if it's big bubbles of ideas. You don't want to do a monologue. And this was my direction to David kind of, is you want to say like, let me set the scene. I was outside the theater and it was on the corner of this street and that street. And I walked out and the rain started falling down. Like you have to say it in a way that's like a cabaret style, because no one talks like that. But when you're about to sing, and that's why I'm going to sing this song right now. And then it's almost like DJ talk.
No, yeah, I get it.
And so then he had to start adjusting his inflections to mimic the cabaret form, so that the audience that's wanting to see him do a cabaret, even though it's happening in reverse, even though he's taking his first drink after 8.5 years, even though he's like reflecting on what's upsetting in his life and like watching him devolve, still has to be spoken in the style of cabaret, which is kind of a fascinating thing. Anyway, it was its own puzzle.
It's always, it is. That sort of stuff is always really interesting. Like getting like the audience coming into it, the mindset they have coming in is completely like how you can then shape the experience. And so it's always really interesting when someone's like, it's my first time at this thing. You're like, oh, this will be very different for you because you don't know the language yet, or you don't know the you're not ready. I can't play on your expectations if you're expecting the wrong thing. And so it's really interesting. I just had that recently, just reading a book, which I started reading like it was like a classic whodunit, and then realized halfway through, like, oh no, this is a detective story that is not really a whodunit. Like, I'm not gonna treat this like an Agatha Christie. I've got to just read it like a fun.
I worry about that
comedy
sometimes with the rooms that I write. It hasn't happened for a little while, but occasionally I will write a room and you'll tell me what sort of guests you think about contacting, and I will say, "Ooh, not for this room."
Yeah, they won't like this
not,
one.
Like it's not the right level of experienced with our show person.
I think it's what makes me
Like,
most excited about learning like how the sausage is made, right? Because when I'm still fascinated about, Danny, how you create the entirety of one of these episodes. Like I still am. I would be freaked out at a blank page of like, do I start with the puzzles? Do I start with the story? Do I do them both simultaneously? Do I make bullet point lists of both and then try and connect them with string? And in the same way, like when I think about immersive theater or Sleep No Mores or things, I think the end result is so seamless and cool and anti-structure and full structure that I like, where did you start? Where did you just how many different iterations
do like
are there?
wondering
I love that.
where people started.
It's what makes my brainy synapses fire the most is when I get turned on of like, how did Jim Henson make the Muppets initially, Would that really come from a sock on his foot and then he turned it into a puppet? Like, I love the process so much.
Yeah, and that's as well, like, right, we've got our own version of that seconds ago where you're talking about like, here's what the show used to be, and it was basically like a playtesting of just like, oh no, I'm looking at the audience and I want them to feel this and they're not quite getting it, so let's tweak and let's tweak and let's tweak. And so, you get your own things. I still freak out talking to Tommy Honton about his design principles, where he'll just be like, I playtest before I've designed anything. It's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, don't worry about it. You just throw people in a room and see what happens. And you're like, all right, this is like so different from how I would do it and so different from how I think.
And he's able to remove
creates these amazing
from
things.
that in a way. Like, I don't know that I would be
So
capable
much.
of doing that. Of just
Not
like
at all.
witnessing people not liking things and just going, okay, I'll just change that now. I'll adjust it. I'd be like, no, they hate it. It's awful.
They hate me. They hate it. They hate me. They think I'm an idiot.
What did I just say? I just was commenting to you. Like
that you hate me and I'm an idiot?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Last night or something, I was saying, oh, who have we just been talking to or something? Their methods are clearly so different from my methods. I have no idea what we're talking about.
It was an escape from design thing. It was someone talking about their making things from puzzles first and collecting puzzles and then adding a room to it. There was something about that. I can't remember what it was anymore. But we've had that, interestingly, like we've been working now on a game and it's been interesting because it was like a creative...
Oh, that's what it was. It was game design. It was to do with Rise of the Golden Idol.
Yeah, because we've been working with other designers and people who are like now creative bosses, right? Like people who can say, hey, nice idea, sorry, don't do it, do something else.
Nice.
Which has been, not that they're like that, but it's been a different experience of like working creatively within somebody else's project and with someone else's oversight and with other people. And it's been, every now and then you'll find these moments where you're pitching completely different things. You have to realize, we're at different parts of the project in our head. Like you're already picturing how puzzles are going to work, and I'm sitting here thinking, what kind of character would ever do this type of action? I'm sitting in character motivation.
So
you're thinking of player presentation.
The one that I was just thinking of was one of the people was describing their ideas for one of the scenes, and they've got all of the characters like down pat. They've got dialogue. They've got ideas for what the puzzles are. But the room itself is currently a white room. Whereas for me, the location and what the room looks like is the first thing I need.
Yeah.
In order to create the thing. That's so great.
That was really interesting that would come at it from the exact opposite ends.
I'm fascinated too by these. There's a new way of not new way, but there's an alternate way of storytelling and game playing and immersion that doesn't necessarily have to have solutions. There's a thing called telelibrary. Do you know Yannick Trapman O'Brien?
No.
There's a thing that I'll send you the information, and maybe you can add a link to a link at the end of this. But he does this thing. It's a one person immersive experience where you call the telelibrary. So you would get your time, and it'll be about an hour, and you call, and it's an experience that happens to you and only you via the phone, where you make decisions and you're asked if you want to do this, say 1. If you want to do this, say yes. If you want to do this, say 7. And you, depending on what choice you make, the rules expand and the choices expand. And it's fascinating because it's not designed to win. It's not designed to do it right, but it is deep and in its options. And he's nearing 2,000 people that have done it already. I've done it twice, and it is so impressive because it's just him and you. And I don't want to say too much because I would spoil all kinds of things, right? So it's a thing you should experience. But as I'm, halfway through my experience of almost an hour, I keep thinking I'm choosing the wrong number. What I'm doing is not getting me where I think it should be getting me, until you realize, that's not even the purpose of it. And that's not the thing. And that kind of is the purpose of it, right? So it feels very immersive, and lots of doors that you can open and unlock, and choices to make, which feels very, escape the podcast. And yet it's not like you're being fooled in that there's no right answer. It's just that the fact that there is no right answer is part of the experience. And I don't know, that's kind of an intriguing construct as well.
Yeah, there's always someone doing something really cool all the time that you want to look at and emulate and be part of.
And learn from.
Just always.
Yeah.
There's always, and learn from just, there's just always real cool stuff happening.
I hear that. Like box 2.
Wonderful.
Oh, see how I brought it back
Like
to
box
myself?
2. Well, look at this. Well, why don't we, let's transition into there. Is there anything exciting for box 2 that you can be like, as a teaser for people to make them buy it?
Not spoiling. I don't want spoilers.
Don't spoil, Neil.
Don't
spoil.
I don't
I'll
want to
spoil.
know anything about it.
Oh, you
before
don't?
going
Just
in.
tease it.
There's one.
I don't. Should I take my headphones off?
There's
Yeah,
one.
you take your headphones off.
Okay. There's
Tell me, you
There's
tell me.
one thing that happens as in the very beginning. And I'll tell you what it is, and then if you think that it's too spoily, then don't do it. Right? Then don't.
Yeah, I'll beep it out.
Just end before we do this. But you take the lid off of the box, and it immediately becomes a second box, and you can't put it back
cool.
onto the box, so you automatically have now 2 boxes. And once you've
Oh, that's
opened
so
the game,
cool.
then now it's like it is now part of the game. So
Yeah, that is very cool.
but I
I don't think that's too much of a spoiler at all. I think that's a really interesting moment, but I think it'll be as interesting to see happen when you think it's coming as to be shocked by
is
it.
to be shocked by it.
But either way, it's something really, that's a really nice moment.
It doesn't affect gameplay at all. But I loved the idea because then like once you open box 2 to start playing it, you can't close it and put it back away because it doesn't allow for that anymore, which I thought was kind of a cool idea. And
you're locked in now.
and you suddenly have 2 boxes, a la box 2, which I thought was fun.
2? That's fantastic. Wonderful. All right, Danny, put your headphones on.
All right.
Now I know all the secrets.
Spoilers.
Well, look, thank you so much for coming on.
My great pleasure
and
as always.
talking about design. It's always really nice to talk to you on these episodes because you always have something very interesting and very, very.
You ask the right questions.
Yeah, you ask the right questions and you have your own good answers in mind. It's always a really nice conversation to have.
Oh, thanks. If I couldn't make a profit acting, I would certainly be a maker of things that were structural and puzzle based because it is definitely my happy place. So I thank you both.
You do that too.
Well,
Yeah, so
as a side
anyone
hustle.
listening, if the message to take away is stop hiring Neil because we want more puzzles. Don't. Every time he auditions,
You
don't
hear that, Tonys?
hire him. Don't let him host the Tonys. He's got puzzles to make.
I like building things.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much
Thanks, guys.
for coming on and playing the room and discussing some fun stuff. And thank you, people at home, for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I think it was the whole thing was very fun. Thank you, Danny, for making some cool
I think
boat
it went
rooms.
well.
I think it came together very well. I liked the interconnected boat rooms and the fun little nods to the other ones. I think it worked out very nicely as our first connected but not through narrative arc.
Yeah, I definitely like to bring more intense narratives back, but it was a good one to try.
So thank you so much for listening. If you want to help support the show, tell someone about it. It's always still the best way. People like to listen to podcasts that they are told about by other people that they respect. So as long as there's someone who respects you in your life, please spread the word about Escape This Podcast.
And did you hear what Vic said? I don't know if it made the recording part or not, but like Vic started listening to the show and said that they were upset that they didn't know about it beforehand.
Yeah.
That they didn't know about this earlier.
Everyone who currently doesn't
You don't know
know
how many people in your life feel the same way.
Yeah. It's mean to people not to tell them about our show. It's cruel to not tell them about Escape This Podcast. But you can also support the show on Patreon. Anybody who signs up for any level can appear as an NPC in one of these rooms.
Thank you so much, Brandon Sheets. That was you for this one.
It was a good room, a good name for a captain.
Great Captain.
Yeah, it worked
Pirate
really
name.
well.
I didn't know. I didn't know about the 3 sheets to the wind phrase,
But
but
it worked out perfect.
couldn't have worked out better.
Anyone who signs up at $5 a month gets all the bonus episodes. I used to say there was a new piece of bonus audio every week. Now there's a little bit more than that because we ran out of space to put cryptic crosswords up, so we'll just throw them out every now and then, unscheduled, for our $5 donors as well. But yeah, there's lots of great audio there for $5 donors, and there's extra stuff for our 10 and 20. And everyone there is helping support this show with their donations. We don't run ads or anything. That's where we make our money. So thank you so much for helping keep this ship afloat. afloat a sea of cash.
Just to keep people updated, this weekend is my first roller derby match, and the team that I'm playing for is called the Buccaneers.
Oh, well, look at that. Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
It's
Thank
also
you.
just a notice if I don't come back next
It's
week.
'cause you got
know what
broken.
happened.
You were broken by big roller derby freaks. Crushed you to the ground.
It may well
Ripped
happen.
the star off your head. No
You
points
think I'll
for
have
you.
the star?
Hey guys,
Thank
do
you,
you
everybody, for
know do you
listening
know
to the
why pirates are bad at karaoke?
Why?
Because they can't hit the high seas.
Oh.
Poor pirates. Thanks, everybody. Bye.